Hi there, I'm breaking news reporter Andrew Ford here again with Kepler Funk. This week, the state rested its case-in-chief against the man accused of shooting Brevard County Sheriff's Deputy Barbara Pill. Just thought we'd go over a couple of the highlights of the case that they put forth.
Sure.
Let's start right off. The stolen gun.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot for us to go through. I mean, when we first met and started talking about this case, we talked about the length of the case, right, and how much evidence the government was going to put in this case. They did. They started off with the gun. That I think the government successfully proved that the gun was stolen, the gun that was actually used in this murder. That's what they started off with. Probably a good idea by them.
Then we moved on to the robbery at the motel.
Right.
Taking furniture out.
Well, remember now, the state is really looking forward to and preparing for a penalty phase, right? If there's a conviction for first-degree murder, then you move to a penalty phase. And the penalty phase, for the government to get the death sentence, which is what they're seeking in this case, they have to prove aggravators. One of the aggravators that they believe that they've proved is that flight after the commission of a robbery, right? Remember, they showed that Mr. Bradley hit that gentleman on the way out with his vehicle, kind of escaping, so to speak, of the police officers that were on their way to investigate the robbery. Then there's the flight from that. That's an aggravator. That's why the state did that.
Planning ahead.
Exactly.
The last day of their case, the state brought out this FDLE analyst who showed that Bradley's DNA was on the grip and the trigger of the gun.
Yeah, I thought that was a really effective way for the state to end their presentation, right? If you remember, the very last thing the state presented before resting their case, and resting their case just means they're finished, right? It's a formal way of saying we're finished for now, is this. They had the DNA expert from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement say, we found Mr. Bradley's DNA where? On the trigger of that gun. Then the state says, we rest. Wow, I think a powerful way for them to rest their case.
Sure. The defense started their case on Thursday. Friday, they brought out a Palm Bay police officer who refuted some of what Jeffrey Dieguez, the guy on the phone with Kircher,
right,
what he said about why he was in the hospital the first time he talked to police.
Boy, remember we said he was going to be interesting, and it hasn't ended, has it? We heard more today that this fella, according to the defense, absolutely lied. I mean, I can't say that. I don't use that word very often, but the defense is saying this guy lied about the reason why he was in the hospital. Remember, he said on the stand, you and I were there, we watched it. He said that he was there because he was robbed and stabbed. Remember, he even used the word stabbed. Well, the defense's contention, and it seems like they might be right, was he was there for what's called a Baker Act, or maybe involuntarily committed there for maybe a cocaine overdose or some drug use, and the testimony was no relation to any stabbing or robbery. What effect that's going to have on this case, of course, the defense wants the jury to say, that guy, Mr. Dieguez, you can't believe a word that guy's saying. He came in before you and lied right to your faces, so discount everything he's saying. That's good, and they're doing the right thing. The problem is what? That's right. Miss Kirchner's still out there.
The judge said that they expect to have this wrapped up by Tuesday, and they'll hand it over to the jury to deliberate. If they come back with a guilty verdict for first-degree premeditated murder, we'll go into this penalty phase where they have to weigh aggravating and mitigating circumstances to decide if Bradley deserves the death penalty. What do you think the goals are for the state and the defense during that process?
Well, the state, of course, wants to prove or argue that they have proven the more aggravators, the better, kind of in the eyes of the state. This flight from the commission of the robbery, the fact that there was a law enforcement officer victim, the fact that he was on probation or was in violation status at the time of the murder, all of these things, the judge is going to read the list of aggravators for them to consider. Mitigation, okay? Mitigation is anything that a jury finds to be mitigating. We have kind of a catch-all phrase. Everybody thinks mitigation is different in their human life's experience, right? Whatever the defense wants to show Mr. Bradley, he suffered from a horrible drug addiction, as an example, right? That seems to be the one they're focusing on, and they're going to argue that that's mitigating, not an excuse. They're not going to say that's an excuse for the crime. What they're going to say is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want you to consider this point before you make your decision on whether or not to vote for life or death. And the defense is going to put everything they possibly can that they believe is mitigating, and a jury is free to find anything being mitigating.
All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts, Kepler. Stay tuned for our coverage of the trial of Brandon Bradley. We've been there from the beginning. We'll be there to the very end. This is Andrew Ford for Florida Today.